Hold on. Can we just start over?
Oh, yes, you may. Absolutely.
Okay. Hi, I'm SK Kerastas.
Hi, I'm Meghan Program.
And we... I ran a queer youth theater program in Chicago for 5 years, and that's actually how we know each other. We met collaborating. Meghan was working at an organization called the Broadway Youth Center, and I would go... I think we collaborated on some workshops and did a couple exchanges where the young people we were working with like met each other, and that was kind of my angle and my focus and my passion.
And I'm a former youth organizer, and I've done a lot of youth programming at different age ranges. And I'm also a current herbal student or aspiring herbalist. My work has really been about like merging sort of like my political organizing field with myself as a healer. We're really exploring this concept as healing as a method of story sharing and looking at how folks can share their stories differently when they're operating through a space of healing ritual, and more specifically ritual as performance. We did a lot of background work and things like, this is how you tincture a plant, this is how you make salve out of lavender. And through like those practices of learning how to make medicine, we got to explore how people like to use medicine and what sort of like rituals or spiritual components that they bring to the table when they're healing themselves.
Well, first of all, we didn't really do any programming for 5 weeks, maybe?
No.
4 weeks?
4 weeks, yeah.
4 weeks. We would just go and share space. The group we were working with was a support group that meets every week for trans women of color. We did like 4 Fridays of just, you know, chilling, checking in, just like everyone else did, getting a lot of advice, and and eating, sharing food together. And I think a lot of listening too. We were really, in addition to relationship building in that time, we were also like, okay, here's the vibe of this place. Here's like, you know, it's really different when you're working with people who've like shown up for rehearsal versus folks who are like coming to a space to eat and get some basic needs met. You know, Meghan would like open up the session with like a nice grounding, usually just like some guided meditation real quick, and then we would do kind of like half focused on medicine and half focused on like some artistic practice. Meghan would introduce a plant, talk about its healing properties, and the group would like make something together.
The energetics of the plants would definitely shift the energetics of the story sharing, and I think that happened like a physiological medicine way, in the way that like if you huff enough lavender, your body will start to calm down. Or if you drink enough chamomile tea, your cells will start to feel rejuvenated. And also in more of a just like sort of magical way too, in that like if we did a practice of trying to do a movement that embodied what we associated the healing properties of rose to be over and over again, those movements and those stories and those properties would come out, and how they chose to talk about their lives.
Yeah, that Jasmine day was like...
I got a little lot. Lavender.
Yeah. Lavender.
Lavender.
Oh my god, you remember? Really incorporating a lot of the elements and like what people received from the plants into a performative space.
Well, then we would close usually with, they would go into check-in.
Right. Yeah.
Which was also really insightful to see the ways in which people were checking in before our program would start versus after they had made some medicine, talked about healing value, talked about healing rituals, and then would check in again. Their check-ins would shift drastically sometimes.
Yeah. I just remember, you know, like the people really connecting to what the plants were offering too. Like on the Rose Day, we were talking about sort of the harshness as well as like the harshness of the thorns, as well as the softness of the petals of love. It's like the duality of love, right? And we checked in for like an hour that day. Like everyone had a story, you know what I mean? Everyone wanted to talk about their ex. Like everyone was just, you know, sharing in this really beautiful way.
For example, one of the women in the program invited us on I think our second to last week to come see her garden. She had like a plot as well as a chicken coop in a community garden space. And so there was also this thing, there was like this discovery that happened with her. It was just like, oh, she already had so much information about plants and was already using plants to provide like a healing ritual for her already. Probably about after week 9, I think, is when we realized that it was time to do something more intimate. So we started working, as SK was saying, with 4 women, and we met an hour before their main like drop-in group, and would just like focus on them and their specific stories and the way they wanted to tell it, and if their stories related to any of the plants we had been learning about. With the plan of, we built a large altar space and we made little healing bouquets for everyone in the group. We set up the chairs, and the women would come in sort of one by one and perform like a ritual of storytelling and also of plant honoring. So they would pick their specific plant up off of a larger altar, tell their story while holding the plant, introduce the plant to the group, and then sit down and light a candle for the plant. And then at the end, they ended their stories by blowing out the candles together. It was very like spell-like. Their stories were like prayers in this way.
The women in the audience were like crying when they were asking questions, which was like something that was part of that culture. Lots of like affirmations to each other, you know, but you could just like tell that the audience, who were their peers and family, you know, were like really moved.
Yeah, maybe even just to see like such a tenderness and respect given to those stories by like, you're holding the flowers, you're standing in front of us, you have the candle, you're taking your time with the story. And it's not even a story they hadn't heard before, you know, but there's just such a difference of telling it in this way where you come in and you're like, have a good day, and you're like, girl, let me just tell you what just happened to me, like da-da-da, versus
like someone's interrupting you or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
One participant, and she was probably the oldest. And, you know, in group, like, I don't think she ever said a word. She, like, never, you know, if she was pressed to check in, she would say, things are going great, and, you know, I'm great, move it along. But within this group, she just, like, blossomed and was one of, like, I would say...
the strongest.
Yeah, like, her story was consistent. She really took direction well, and, yeah, you could just see her, like, opening up through the process.
I feel really hungry to work with an elder community again. I think coming from the Midwest, I've never really had that much access to a queer community over the age of 30. I mean, to be able to spend my Friday nights with my reflections, you know, with these femme queer Black women was really special, and just like absolutely something that I didn't even realize that I didn't have access to until this group.
We put in so much time to build relationships with these folks, right? To almost to the point where we're like starting to become this like stable presence in that space, only then to like leave it. So I think being really conscious of those dynamics at play, and like how can we like keep a good thing going as well. It's a beautiful thing to hear from people who've been through it, like over and over and over again, and have so much to say about how they survived and how they learned. They said we were always welcome.
Yeah,
and that we were family.